10 years ago, an EF4 tornado touched down on the outskirts of Pulaski County and went on a path of destruction and devastation that stretched for 41 miles and lasted close to an hour. The deadly storm started in the community of Ferndale, where it immediately began wiping away homes and destroying lives. It moved through rural Pulaski County over Lake Maumelle and into Faulkner County. After it crossed the Arkansas River, it hit the River Plantation subdivision. It continued its path into Mayflower, crossing Interstate 40 and Lake Conway. The storm eventually made its way to Valonia, where it brought down an entire neighborhood, churches, and a new school. After 56 minutes, the storm dissipated in White County near El Paso. 16 people were killed, 193 others were hurt. It's a night that forever changed Arkansas and the people impacted by the storm. People like Chuck Rickard at the National Weather Service. He was on duty that afternoon as things began to develop. I sat down with him to talk about what he remembers about that night in April.
I guess you could say that it's always in the back of your mind. I mean, myself having worked a number of events in years past, it's like, you know, the potential's there. It's just like you almost tell yourself, you know, it could happen, but you don't know, you know, you don't want it to happen.
You had a severe thunderstorm warning issued probably. You were the one that was in charge of all those warnings. Tell me how that all unfolded.
It was a Sunday, which you take into consideration, it's like, you know, compared to a weekday or, you know, any time of day, it's like being the evening hours on a Sunday. It's like the thought initially popped in my head too. It's like, you know, how many people were home, you know, maybe people, you know, going to church functions, they may be out to dinner. We like to say it tightened up, and that was probably one of those, you know, oh my gosh moments in simple terms as far as when I saw that, and I was like, you know, this thing's producing a tornado, or it's about to very soon.
And then the trajectory of the storm was taken into Mayflower and Valonia. What was going through your mind?
Yeah, I would say probably right then and there, and then just seeing the data from the radar, we knew there was something on the ground that was already doing damage, knowing that that area of Valonia and Mayflower had been hit before, just several years earlier, and it's like, you know, it crosses your mind, it's like, is this going to be a repeat of that again?
When you saw it was picking up debris and how high that debris was going, what were you thinking?
I knew then and there it was. And then we also saw video, I think there were chasers on that storm along I-40, and just seeing some of the video, it's like it was just a monster. You're driving your vehicle on the interstate at 60 miles an hour. I mean, that's how fast the storm was moving. So it's for folks that may have just seen it or just didn't know it was coming, you basically have less than a minute maybe to even react or, you know, seek some kind of shelter.
You're thinking of families, you're thinking of possibly maybe somebody you know, your friends. Did you have anybody that you were looking out for in that situation that was real close to you?
At the time I didn't. I was just hoping that folks got the warnings and were able to seek shelter, I believe, but it didn't really become a national product until, maybe the mid-2000s. But that's told me that both their mom and dad's, their parents' house had been impacted in the Plantation subdivision there near Mayflower. And at the time I didn't know it, but then when the news came out about the couple where they were in the storm shelter and the door for the shelter was impacted by debris and basically collapsed the door, and that definitely hit home. Talk about
the next day.
I think the first area we did go into was that Plantation subdivision. It's basically like a bomb went off. We started seeing just various houses, and I remember a big dump truck was moved. It's kind of a, I guess, mixed emotion still, even for that time period, because you know spots that you survey, you know somebody just 24 hours ago was alive and doing what they do on a Sunday evening, and then just in an instant, their lives changed.
How has this event changed you as a meteorologist and as a person?
Anybody's life can change in an instant. At times I wish if I'd say put a warning out sooner, if that would have changed anything as far as folks that may have been impacted, if they could have done something different. it affects you. I mean, I won't, sugarcoat it, but it's just, it's something that does stay in your mind, because it's, that's one of the days I'll always remember working, and here we are 10 years later, and it's still, thinking about stuff. I can still, in my mind, replay what happened that afternoon and that evening, and then especially the next day going out and seeing the damage itself. It's like you just don't, that basically imprints on your mind, and it's just a memory you just never forget.
Still ahead, we sit down with a woman whose home was one of the first hit by the tornado, how that night changed her family forever, and how she keeps moving forward 10 years later after the break. Plus, we take a trip to Faulkner County to hear from one of the officials who helped guide the community through the tragedy. More on the connection he and a member of the THV11 team still share. Stay with us. Look at the areas hit hardest by the 2014 tornado, and you'll see communities thriving. But if you'll look a little closer and find the people who lost loved ones that night, you'll see something different. Tom Brandon sat down with Carrie Tittle, a mother and wife whose family was broken that night. He shares her story and the wounds that they are still healing 10 years later.
We were watching the weather, and for days leading up to the event, it was what everyone talked about. So we were weather aware. Rob was in the backyard with 2 or 3 of the older kids, and they were taking pictures because there was like some really crazy lightning going on.
Yeah.
And that's when we just saw these huge trees laying down. Huge trees just laying down. So we were putting kids under the stairwell. And I remember picking up something and throwing it down the hallway just so we could get everyone in. And the next thing I knew, I was getting up off the ground.
And how many were you trying to get safe?
11. There was 11 of us. So I had all my kids were under the stairwell except Tori and Rebecca and Rob and I. And they were the ones that had passed away in that.
Not long after it happened, when did you discover or find out that everyone was scattered?
Immediately. We weren't terribly scattered. We were kind of close, but we were in the backyard. I mean, there was no house at all. Like there was nothing on the foundation. It was wiped clean.
It might be a little painful to talk about Rob, Tori, and Rebecca. Reflecting back then and now,
Yeah.
How are you dealing with that?
You know, I'm finding that it doesn't get better. You learn to live with a void, kind of like a hole in your life. And grief happens all the time. I mean, it can happen like when you least expect it. And I've learned to just breathe through it, because there's nothing else you can do, really. You just breathe through it.
You said it doesn't get any easier. It's been 10 years. So what are you doing now? What are you doing to cope? I know that when this time of year comes around, you think about it, I'm sure.
All the time. Well, every time it rains or the wind blows or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how I cope. I just stay really busy. And thankfully I have lots of children, that I have to take care of, and that's just kind of that's my focus, is caring for them.
Does that keep you going?
It does. I mean, I don't know what I think it would have been a totally different outcome had I not had children to take care of, so they kind of give you a purpose.
If anything positive could come from this situation, with the pain and the reminder, what would that be?
Obviously, it wasn't a good thing.
No.
But the Lord has brought good things out of it. I mean, He really has. He's brought a lot of changed hearts out of it. He's given us many opportunities to help other people. I would say it's humbling because I don't think I did everything right. I think I've made a lot of mistakes, and to hear other people say that they've been moved by the event, it's God. I mean, I really can't take credit for whatever they see in me, because it's really been God that's worked. I think it's good to remember events like these, because I think it's a good reminder of how short life is.
I'll tell you that even being in that green wall down there, I still get anxious and scared in knowing what could happen. Mm-hmm. And I'm thankful that whenever we have an event like this, and we hear no fatalities, no injuries, that there's a big relief there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because it's very impactful. I mean,
it is. Because it doesn't just impact one person, it just impacts, even like the little guy who has never met his father because he was 7 months old. I mean, it's hard for him not to have a dad, it is. There's always every time a daughter's getting married, who's going to walk her down the aisle, or first day of college, and there's just so much to be grateful for people, and sometimes we take that for granted.
So at the time, I was a lead forecaster at the Dallas-Fort Worth office, and right at the end of my shift, Central Arkansas, Southwest Central Arkansas, was upgraded to a high risk by the Storm Prediction Center. So being the weather nerd that I am, I went home and fired up my laptop and started watching the event unfold. I wanted to see what was going to happen. The only thing I really know is that my high school best friend, Adam Bledsoe, lived somewhere in Central Arkansas. So I sent him a text. Adam was a sheriff's officer for Faulkner County Sheriff's Office, which again, I didn't know where it was. He's wanting to know where the rotation is, where I think the tornado is, so that he can go and perform some search and rescue. Talking with him after the event, it's my understanding that he used that information, actually walked the damage path, and was able to help a family out of their home, basically help pull them out of the rubble very shortly, within minutes of the aftermath of that disaster.
It's stories like that one that continue to inspire the people of Arkansas every time severe weather impacts a part of our state. Stories of resilience in the face of adversity. Adam Bledsoe traveled back to the county he once served and talked with one of the officials who helped lead response and recovery efforts in that area.
We're here in the River Plantation neighborhood. This is the first neighborhood to get hit by the tornado.
It is first in our county.
Yes.
Came, of course, from Ferndale and Pulaski County. And this was, a pretty dense neighborhood. So there were a lot of houses hit. Came right through the middle of it. So that day I went by my mom's. We were getting ready to gear up our emergency operations center. And on my way, I stopped off at my mother's house to have a meal and turned the weather on there. And that's when we started tracking it as it came into Pulaski County. And I saw a hook echo.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Ed Buckner and Sarah Fortner in the Storm Center tracking severe weather. Our first tornado warning for Central Arkansas has just been issued.
And we could tell that it was a pretty devastating tornado, and the radio traffic that you're monitoring. What was going through your mind?
If that's on the ground, if that's at ground level, it's a bad situation with a large tornado, very powerful. And I'll never forget hearing then Fire Chief, Mayflower Fire Department, Carl Rossini, saying we have a funnel cloud, and it was just briefly after that he said we're losing transformers right here near the fire department. And then you could tell as we were tracking power outages on our screens at the EOC, you could tell, you could see a track.
It begins tracking to the northeast at a pretty good pace. What was going through your mind at that time as it's exiting Mayflower, going into the county, headed right for Valonia?
I don't think you can describe the emotions. As county judge, I feel responsibility for really our whole county. nothing you can do about the weather, but I'm thinking about the people and thinking, what in the world are we going to do? After 18 hours, you know, I made the decision I have to get out and see the damage myself. People need to hear from me on scene. They need to see that their government is intact and we're out there responding. To this day, I still can't believe the destruction. You're gonna have to cut it. I believe it's this property where there was a 2x4 stuck through a bass boat with no cracks. It looked like the fiberglass had been formed around the 2x4. No micro fissures or anything like that. It was amazing. I remember driving on the dam road and the debris, this was maybe 2 or 3 days after search and rescue was complete, and not being able to see over the debris piles into the yards. It was like driving through a maze. It felt like a mouse in a college experiment. This
was to the level to where the top of the federal government literally came to Faulkner County to visit this devastating area.
Well, we had immediate assistance from then Arkansas Department of Emergency Management, Division for Emergency Management now in the governor's office. FEMA, I believe it was the fastest the president had ever signed a disaster declaration on a disaster of this nature.
Do you feel that this event brought residents of Faulkner County closer together?
Without question, yeah, probably still today. And I would say, not just Faulkner County, but the state of Arkansas. I think we had volunteers from every continent other than Antarctica. You know, even today I will remember new aspects of it that I haven't thought about for years, trying to figure out, could we do that again if we had to?
What's the answer to that?
Yes.
Our tagline is, we're better together. Do you feel that way as far as a Faulkner County resident and a resident of Arkansas and the United States?
We are. We're better together. I think I would agree with that. I think it's easy to see if you just drive through the path of destruction and you see the lives that, you know, where people have moved on. You know, I hearken back to dear uncle who's passed away. He's the former county judge of Van Buren County. You know, they experienced a flood in Clinton in 1990. And I remember him on national TV saying to the news reporter, "Don't you worry, we'll be back in full bloom." And here in spring of 2024, if you look around and you see the blooms around us, we're back in full bloom. We'll never forget those we lost, but we're here in full bloom.
We've done a really good job of building back. Our schools have pulled together, our communities, churches, everybody involved has pulled together to make this, again, a place that you want to be and that you want to be with your family, that you want to bring your kids to school, or you want them to be a part of this, because we have so many good things going on here. It's not that devastated town that it used to be after the tornado.
That is Ronnie Simmons, principal of Valonia High School. He's worked for the district for almost 20 years and remembers when the town's brand new intermediate school was destroyed on April 27, 2014. When they rebuilt the facility, crews included a storm shelter. It's now a place of protection people can turn to, no matter the storm. And just like that school, the areas hit hard that night are stronger and more prepared for whatever life brings. Thank you for joining us for this THV11 special presentation. Good night.